Hi, everybody. This is meant to help you to do the learning review that's due on Friday night, May 10th, and also to give you a little bit more information about the first part of your final project, where you're comparing confidence intervals across groups. So the learning review begins by asking you for your research question and your null and research hypotheses. Then in question 2, I'm asking you to go into RStudio and compare your dependent variable by confidence interval across your different independent variable groups. And so if you've emailed me and told me what your variables are, or we've talked about it and I've made a note of it, then there's going to be code for you in this link. So let's take a look at this code. The code is called Spring 2019 Final Projects, and it has several components that are important for you to make note of. First is the opening chunk that everybody needs. It's where the libraries and the data are loaded, and so you want to have that before you have anything else in your notebook. Next is where I dichotomize the variables. And so if you emailed me and you know your variables levels of measurement and you know then that they need to be recoded, I have code for you here. So for example, if your independent variable is interval ratio, you should have contacted me and I would need to recode that to a dichotomous variable. Additionally, if your independent variable is nominal or ordinal with more than 5 or 6 categories, I would have needed to recode it for you as well. If your dependent variable is nominal or ordinal, I also have to make it into a dichotomous variable. So the example I'm going to work with here is the research question, what is the relationship between trust and social class? And so social class is my independent variable. I believe that social class has a relationship with how much trust people have in others, and that there are differences by social class. Social class is an ordinal variable and it has 4 categories. That is a low enough number of categories that we don't need to do any recoding with it. If you have a variable that has many categories, like work status, marital status, region of the country, those all do need to be recoded because they have multiple answers, more than 4 that people can give. And so you need to get in touch with me for me to make the code for you. But so social class doesn't need to be recoded. The variable about trust does. It is a nominal variable, whether people can be trusted or not, and it's currently coded in the GSS as a 1-2 variable, meaning people who say you can be trusted are coded as 1, people who say that you can't be too careful are coded as 2. To make confidence intervals, we need to have that variable coded as dichotomous, meaning as a 0-1 variable. And so I have alphabetically listed the variables that people have emailed me about. And you can see as we go down, here's the code for trust. So I'm making a dichotomized variable where true or 1 is people can be trusted and false or 0 is you can't be too careful. Then I say you should be able, for your final project, to do the descriptive statistics yourselves by looking at the midterm code. And I added a link to the midterm code under the final project instructions so you can access it more easily. Then this code shows you getting the confidence intervals just for your dependent variable without looking across groups. This was your learning review that was due last Friday, May 3rd, but I have code for that here. And you can see still going down 95 and 99% confidence intervals. We're using our recoded variables here. And then this is where we get the information for the learning review, looking at confidence intervals by groups. And again, if you told me your variables, I've given you code here. And so for trust and class, we have right here. Class is the independent, trust is the dependent, and we have the code. What is the code telling us to do? Well, it's basically saying pull out everybody who identifies as lower class from the GSS 100 data. And the people who are lower class are coded as 1 within the class variable. And then for that specific group of lower class people, let's look at the variable trusting. Remember, that's the dichotomous variable about whether people are trusted or not trusted. And get me the 95% confidence interval and get me the 99% confidence interval for trusting for the lower class. I then repeat that, only this time I'm pulling out the working class people, and you can see I select the GSS variable class when it's equal to 2, because that's the code for working class people. And then among the working class people, I get the proportion of trusting with a 95 and a 99% confidence interval. And I do that again for middle class, and I do it for upper class. So those are the components that we're going to need to do the learning review. Let's go into our studio. Okay, so what I recommend you do in order to save any headaches that you might have if you have code in your notebook that's not running well or you've run into problems before, and just to keep it simple, I say to go into File, go into New File, File, New File, and then get a new notebook. And this notebook, you can get rid of everything from line 6 on down. So all you have left is that little part from 1 to 4. And then we're going to go back to where our code is. We're going to paste the very top part that I said everybody needs, which is loading in the libraries. The next thing you want to paste is all of the recodes. You have to have the recodes done before you can run the confidence intervals without any trouble. So back, and we're going to look for the trust variable again. Here it is. I'm going to copy that and paste it. And finally, for this learning review, we want the comparisons across groups. Okay, so this is all we need for the learning review. Let's begin, as always, by making sure we are out of swirl. And so I'm just going to, in the console on the lower left, type by with parentheses after it. If you're in swirl, you may have to type 0 to get to the main menu, and then 0 again to get out of swirl completely. Once we're out of swirl, we'll go back to the notebook area. We'll run our first chunk, which just loads the libraries, and we won't see anything really happen here. Then we're going to make our new variable that's called trusting. So this is our original variable, and you can see it's coded as 1 when people say that they can trust others, and as 2 when people say they cannot trust others. And we've recoded it so that it's still 1 or true when people say that they can trust others, but now it's false or 0 for the people who say you can't be too careful trusting other people. And so here we have the confidence intervals by social class. Okay, so what we have is for each social class group, the 95 and 99% confidence intervals for the proportion of people who say that others can be trusted. So I'm going to focus on the 95% confidence intervals here. This is for the lower class. We're 95% confident that between 18.2 and 21.5% of lower class Americans say that others can be trusted. Among the working class, this is the confidence interval for them. And we can say we are 95% confident that between 32.4 and 33.8% of working class Americans say that others can be trusted. For the middle class, we're 95% confident that between 47.3 and 48.9% of middle class Americans say others can be trusted. And then among the upper class, we're 95% confident that between 48.1 and 54.1% of upper class Americans say others can be trusted. The next thing I ask you to do once you've gotten these is to compare the groups and see if there are differences between them. Remember that we're checking to see if the groups overlap with each other or don't. If they do overlap, that means that there isn't a difference between them, and that means that there is not a relationship between our independent and dependent variables. If there's a gap between them and no overlap, that indicates that the social class you belong to does have an impact on how much you trust others, and therefore there is a relationship. So our 95% confidence interval for lower class was 18.2 to 21.5. That is clearly different from the confidence interval for working class, the confidence interval for middle class, and the confidence interval for the upper class. Similarly, the confidence interval for the working class is different. It's more than the percentage of people who trust in the lower class, and it's less than the percentage of people who trust in the middle class and in the upper class. Now let's take a look at middle class. At 95%, it goes from 47.3 to 48.9. And for the upper class, it goes from 48.1 to 54.1. So those do overlap with each other. This confidence interval for the upper class starts at 0.481, but the one for the middle class doesn't end until 0.488, indicating that they overlap with each other. Even if it's only slightly, there's still an overlap. And so the middle class and the upper class aren't different from each other in their level of trust, but they are different from the working class and the lower class. I hope this has helped you out. Make sure to also check the final exam information, because I have a lot of information here, including links to the midterm code to help you with your descriptive statistics, the code for your individual projects, and some other examples. And please let me know if you have any questions as well. Thanks.